Hello and welcome to Raising Anchor, your podcast and source for all things Rhode Island FC. I'm your host, Matt Intrican, coming to you on Tuesday, August 6th. RIFC steals a point in stoppage time to deny, gosh, I can't even talk today on the intros, to deny Detroit City from changing their fortunes while extending their own undefeated streak to 8 games. Next, the boys in amber and blue have to continue the Rhode Show, heading down to face Indy 11 for the second game in 7 days. Plus, there's that big game at the end of the week, which we won't spoil for now. We're going to find out if RIFC has enough gas in the tank to get all 3 points before heading home. And until then, joining me is the Pablo Picasso to my Van Gogh, one co-host with the most, Jason Gary. Jason, how's it going, my friend?
Good. Do you weird question? Do you have both your ears?
I mean, it was close. It was a close call. You know, obviously the painting joke is for all of the TIFO support that's been going on, helping out Defiant 1636. I think that banner has now moved more places to get painted in different directions than maybe anything ever, right? Like when you look at the whole fact of, I think it's been like 7 different attempts in different places. It's just been a really incredible situation there.
Yeah, definitely. Having some weird camera issues here, so this is the angle that works. I don't know what's going on with the other one.
That's like rule number 1. That's a MySpace angle. We don't go those angles. So you're getting the underside carriage.
Just showing off the bling.
I love it. So we're having massive technical problems tonight. So this stream is going to be fun.
Everything else is good.
The good news is that we do have the backup. So if everything fails on this live stream, we've got triple redundancy these days. So we should be good to go. We've got a little bit to cover, not a ton, you know. That's the beauty of a 2-leg week where you have multiple shows that are going on. But we do have some crazy chaos that came out of Detroit City or Motor City. I don't know what you call it. They don't like to call it Motor City up there anymore because they don't really make that many cars, I guess.
Yeah,
nowadays.
Not happening too much up there anymore.
I can't get over this camera angle. All right, well, hey, let's drop some news. Let's see what's going on in the world today of soccer, both local and abroad.
Yeah, so we've got another U.S. coaching job rejection on us. The last few days, there have been some rumors over American Pellegrino Matazzaro from New Jersey, who is currently living in Germany and is the coach of Hoffenheim. You know, he is the latest since what we've had Klopp also deny us. So at some point, maybe we need to move away from Germany and try another country. I don't know.
I mean, it seems like it's just a big smoke and mirrors game. We all know it's going to be Trundolo at the end of the day. Like, I don't even know why we're pretending it's not going to be a domestic coach.
Yeah, it does feel like this is maybe just a show for us to say, look, we tried all of the options. The only one left is an MLS coach. So
I have no other words. If it wasn't for the fact that Olympic soccer was still on at the same time, I mean, it's one of those things where they're going to wait. They're going to sneakily drop the news, and then we're all going to shrug our shoulders and go, well, you know, what is it? It's only a home field advantage for the first time since the 90s. Like, what does that even matter, right?
It's only the most important, decade in American soccer.
Speaking of Olympic soccer, the women's U.S. team, some thrillers, some excitement. Yep.
Yeah, took to extra time, but U.S. women's Olympic soccer team took down Germany. And this is what the semifinals. And then we also saw Brazil and Spain today. It's just in a weird spot. I don't know why it's here and not there. So what was it? Brazil for Spain too?
Yes. I think that's correct. I relied on you to get that information. So I just remember they won. I was more interesting in some of the extra time goals that were getting scored in the Olympics. All I know is that the Guild, we were checking in the Discord today, that the Guild will be open for that game. So if that's something where you want to be able to see it, to watch it, you can totally take advantage of that.
As per Defiance, they reached out to us and let us know that the Guild will be open. So if that is what you would like, you guys can head over there and watch the game before you head over to Beirne.
That's going to be a lot of soccer on that day. A lot of soccer on that day. So, anyways, let's get into this because there's some other stuff going on around. We've covered the rest of the world, so let's talk about what's going on our side of the pond, and that is the event partnership. We talked about this. Like, this isn't really new news; it's just more official. I've been saying, you've been saying for months now that this stadium, Tidewater, is not going to be, while it's soccer specific, it's not going to be this thing that just lives and breathes as soccer only, or even just only other sporting events. It's going to be multi-purposed, and that's exactly what the club went out and finally announced today, is that they've announced their long-term partnership with Grand Rising Curations, and they're going to transform Rhode Island FC's future home into that multi-purpose venue, allowing the state-of-the-art development to host concerts, festivals. We even heard about like graduation ceremonies, things like that, that are going to help not only just in addition to the 2025 USL season, but all of those other in between things. Like, this is where that money is going to come from when people are like, taxpayer dollars and what do I do with my money? Well, you go spend it on other things, right? Like, we've joked that Ed Sheeran's going to be the first concert in the history of Tidewater. I don't know if that's true,
Are
but
they going to be the smallest T-Swizzle concerts? She's going to have like what, a whole week straight?
you know when comedians, they go and like test workshop jokes, so they don't go on like their HBO specials or Netflix specials. They go into little comedy shows like the Comedy Connection in East Providence, and they just try new jokes. And sometimes they miss like terribly, and they go, okay, that's not gonna make it into the special. I would be down with T Swift coming in and just trying some new music and
Like a
like,
little-
hey,
You could charge a ton of money for those tickets too. Say it's an intimate night with T-Swizzle.
she'd have I'd even be cooler if like she just changed her name. It was like Swift Tay or something like that. And then, the people that understand. Anyways, we're
That's when
rabbit
she needs
trailing.
to reinvent herself when her career's,
She
stagnating.
doesn't need to reinvent anything. She's a billionaire. She's got it all figured out. But anyways, to wrap things up, I think you had discovered that this group isn't just a significant nobody. They're a big somebody, right?
Yeah, so earlier this year, they actually partnered with Audi Field, the home of DC United, to kind of set up a similar kind of idea. Like you had mentioned, stadiums these days just can't sit there. They need to look at ways to generate revenue during the off season for their respective sports teams.
So I mean, that's exciting. I mean, those are big venues and some of the newest ones out there as well. So the fact that we're partnered with them just kind of speaks to the pedigree of what's going on inside the space. So I'm super excited about that, and I can't wait to see. I just can't wait for the naysayers to finally like be put to bed next year. I saw some Facebook posts from curmudgeons in the community complaining again, and it's like, why are we still having to deal with that narrative, right? Like, soccer's been here now for over 6 months, and we're good, and it's exciting, and people are coming out and watching it. Just if you don't like it, walk away, but don't speak against the club. Speaking of soccer in New England, first and foremost, new Hearts of Pine, they're doing awesome. They have like 62% of their season ticket memberships now sold out. So congratulations to them.
And then didn't Vermont Green sell out all of theirs in like a little over 24 hours?
I bet you it was like 12 minutes, to be honest. Like those maple chuggers, they mean business up there.
It just took a while to update.
Right, but on top of that, well, I mean, this is sad news for Vermont Green, but good news for another team in New England that a lot of people forget exists, especially when we think about like, could we have a New England Cup? Well, we really could now, and that's because we got a new USL champion. We have a championship trophy that has come to New England, and it didn't come via the New England Revolution.
Yeah, so USL 2 championship just happened this past weekend. And the Seacoast United Phantoms from up in New Hampshire have won their first USL League title, USL League 2 title, that is. And they played against Kevin Vang's old team, Peoria City Soccer. Did you know, I didn't realize this when I was kind of looking into Seacoast United Phantoms. Do you know the Sean Carey was their head coach from 2006 to 2009? And so I went back to the RIFC press releases because I was like, did I just not notice this or miss this? And so they allude to him being in those lower divisions, but they never said the team for some reason.
We got to next time I see him.
Someone needs to update Sean Carey's Wikipedia page because it's just a broken link. It just didn't go anywhere.
Well, did you know that for the Phantoms, Jackson Lee also played? He's an alumni of the Phantoms. So a little bit of, 7 degrees of separation of Sean Carey, Jackson Lee here, but congratulations to them. I think most important and more excitingly then is the fact that with this championship win, they will be in the US Open Cup. So when we talk about next year's, Vermont Green's going to have to earn it, but the Phantoms are in. So that now tells me that we could see some very spicy US Open Cup, if it still exists next year, between
Crossing my fingers.
Hearts of Pine, Hartford Athletic, us, Revolution, and right now Seacoast United. So Vermont just needs to get their act together, make sure they get in. We could have an internal New England Cup within the US Open. I think that'd be rad.
Yeah, you love to see like those kind of local rivalries like that, even if they're not maybe as heated, just kind of, like fun little local stuff to kind of really get the community rallied behind the teams.
Yeah. So let's get into some of the things going on with Rhode Island FC, specifically now moving back to our team, hashtag not a USL2 podcast. Clay Holstead, goal of the week contender. Is he going to get it? No. Let's get honest.
Yeah. We're working on it. We keep trying. I think as next year when we start filling Tidewater, we get all those casuals, we get some more people involved, maybe we can really brigade these votes.
It's so interesting though, because like I look at Clay Holstead and even our own fans are saying he doesn't deserve it this week. There were better goals, but it's like, it's the principle of the thing. Like you vote for the guy, you get him in because it's a popularity contest. And with all of the popularity going on right now with these chip promotions and the better beaches, better seafood videos that are going on, like we have eyeballs within the state. Like people are talking, primarily they're talking about our seal, our mascot and not our team, but that's part of the process, right? That's how you build a brand. But like, yeah, with all that attention, like I'd love to see just a little bit of that convert into some appreciation, because like people are either just interested in the rivalry brewing, they're interested in hating on Connecticut as a very Rhode Island thing to do, or they just enjoy being entertained for 2 minutes. And Rhode Island FC is putting out Chef's Kiss, some of the best content in USL right now, and they also need to be acknowledged and rewarded for that. So for the team, for the front office that's listening, and I think some of the video contributors and video editors and media content group, like you guys just killing it right now. I can't wait to see the final. There's one more promotion video. Tom Quinlan keeps teasing it. I think he might be in it. I think because early on he was teasing that like he was helping, him and Mike D were helping support something. They talked to us, but it was early in stages, and so I think Quinlan's in on the last one. I don't know. I honestly do not know anything, but I wouldn't be surprised if we see him do anything. Do you think what the last better is?
No, I can't wait to see what the other videos are. I'm just kind of enjoying them as they come. I'm not spending too much time pondering what they're going to be.
Listeners, I see you guys in the chat. If you guys have a theory on what you think the last better is going to be for this trifecta of video perfection, throw it in the chat and we'll go from there. But I want to go back in time because this is important from last week's podcast. I made a statement, and I'm a man who, when I am corrected, especially by the fans, I give them their due. I take my comeuppance. Like the responsible person that I need to be. And I put out a question, and that question was Jojea Quizera's yellow card against North Carolina FC the worst yellow card we've ever seen in the history of the game? And one listener went out of his way to not only drop referee education on me, but then also explain why it was probably the most reasonable yellow card of all space and time. So you're my technical guy. Like, you're always the smarter of the two of us. Everyone knows you're the smarter of the two of us, and you're the face of this podcast. So like, I don't even know what I'm doing here, but do you want to walk people through kind of what we were told and kind of go through why that yellow card actually made sense for Jojea Quizera?
Yeah, I don't have the email in front of me here. I'll just kind of summarize it. But a fan of the pod who is an active referee for amateur up to like adult, from amateur for kids all the way up to adults.
And this is not Seth the Ref, by the way.
Yeah, this is a completely different person.
Someone asked me, like, you haven't mentioned Seth the Ref in a few weeks. Seth the Ref is going through an incredible, like, life-changing job opportunity. So he's going to be gone for a bit, but we still connect, we still talk. So this is not Seth the Ref that wrote in on this.
But yeah, so he's reffed over 600 matches and kind of gave us an explanation about the reffing process and some things that we kind of didn't know, and how they break up the field into certain quadrants. and how they work with the ARs. And there's the corner that the foul happened in is somewhat of a dead zone. Do you remember what it called? Like a
He called it the coffin corner. So
the coffin corner.
This was Joe, and I won't say his last name because I didn't get permission, so I don't want to burn someone out. But Joe was describing this as the coffin, which is the coolest. I've never heard that before in soccer.
But basically, on top of that, he went back and watched the video and said that for refs to make the calls, they want to be within 10 to 15 yards. He said he was probably about 10 yards too far back. He talked about the kind of the discipline action of it, and basically explained to us why, that it wasn't really much of a problem. So getting that perspective of it, and the idea that, being a ref is a tough job, is a thankless job. We generally just complain about them. We never say, hey, that ref did a great job. So, thank you for that perspective. I think that's kind of softened our position on it. At the end of the day, I still don't love it, but I kind of understand it.
Yeah, no, I agree. And all I took away from it was coffin corner. So that just tells you my attention. No, I'm just kidding. Joe wrote it in, and he did mention, when he was fair to call out what the ref could see. And then the double down on it was when Quezera was visibly frustrated at the bad miss. The dissent call had to happen because a ref can't lose control like that. You can't have players kicking balls away, screaming at the ref, even if they're right. Like, the game can go so completely sideways so fast that, like, it was the only choice to it. What I would have loved to do was go back and see, did we get another call later so that we could kind of even cue that? Because again, we were losing at the time. We weren't winning. We weren't even tied. And so I don't know. But anyways, I just want to say, Joe, thank you for the incredible email. Thank you for giving us some education. And hopefully we were able to share that out to listeners to a certain extent as well. You ready to get into this chaos over the weekend on CBS?
Yeah, CBS Prime.
So let's start with the first thing, which I thought I couldn't believe, because one, I usually hear about things like this, just given the proximity to the club that we have. And I didn't hear it until it was on the broadcast. And that was that the team's flight was delayed in getting to the game. So there were problems that they had. Specifically were problems for CBS, because what they wanted to do was this really comprehensive pre-game interview with the players, with coach, and they were so behind on their timetables that a lot of that had to get scrapped because they wanted to, they build that media portfolio for the team. And so I reached out to the club. I was like, what is this flight delay about? Why didn't I hear about this? And they said, first off, Matt, you're not that important. Like, let's just level set, calm down over there. I was like, okay, but why? And they had a couple of different things not go their way. And first and foremost was the plane. There was some mechanical issues that they needed to get straightened out. I think everyone has, at some point, if you've flown at least 5 times in your life, you've played the odds, and we'd need our statistician here to tell us what the percentage or likely chance of getting delayed due to some mechanical or staffing failure. But so the plane got delayed. They fixed the problem, but then bad weather came in. So they were supposed to leave at something like 5 o'clock in the afternoon, and they didn't leave until like almost 10 o'clock at night. So while some of us may be sitting going, well, that's only 5 hours, it's no big deal, that's not the flight time. So they got in well past midnight. Then they had to get settled in. And you heard when Stephen Turnbull did his interview, like, there's a regimented structure. It's like, you're here, you sit down, you eat at this exact time, you go to bed or you read your book or whatever, and then you're here, you do this, you hydrate, you get prepped, you play, and then you're, off to the races, you go home. They lost a lot of that mechanical structure in what was going on the day. So the next day they had to do their like set up, their practice. Everything was off of their timetables, like everything they wanted to do. So at the end of the day, they're professionals. I'm not going to say that this contributed in any way to a bad game or bad performance, but when you do have structure like that in position and then suddenly you have to cope and adjust to it, that can have some consequences on, like, just maybe not your performance, but like your mentality for the day and all of that stuff, right?
Yeah, I mean, little things like that can throw everything off. It's interesting that you say that. And then looking at some of the first half and maybe even leading into the end of the game, feeling that like maybe RIFC was just a little behind on things.
They were jet lagged. I mean, like, listen, there's a part of me I really want to say, like, oh, let's defer to this, right? Like, let's blame Breeze Airways, guys. I mean, I don't actually know if they flew Breeze, by the way. They wouldn't confirm that, which I don't think they ever will. But yeah,
these
like
you
things do have
said,
circumstances.
everyone who's flown a few times has experienced this. So that's just kind of the reality of flight. And you can't just always use things as an excuse, because other teams at some point in the season have probably had the same issues.
Right. That's one of my favorite things. I've gotten a chance over my lifetime to interview a couple of MLS players or have conversations with them. And the ones that come from international game always say, like, you have no idea the impact of the time changes and what that can have on not just your cyclical clock, but like just how you set up your day. Obviously that's not the case on this one, same time zone, but those kinds of travel things have impacts. So anyways, that was the flight delay for anyone who heard on the broadcast, like what was that going on. So that's the details there.
So is that why they were doing those mid-game like NFL style interviews with the coach?
Yes, that was all part of the CBS design of like getting Coach Dickio, getting Coach Smith, and then there's some post-game pressers that CBS has the rights to right now that haven't been released. I don't know if they will now, or they'll use them for content later. But if you weren't watching, because remember, like especially, I don't know, I wasn't at the watch party, so you'll have to tell me in a second how the vibe was there. But like if the game just kind of shut down and we didn't get into the post-game sessions because it didn't trigger into those, if you were there and you weren't watching it, like how would you have known that you're going to get a 15-minute breakdown and then have interviews with both sides of the teams? I don't know. I'd be curious, anyone that watched it from like home and just enjoyed it on Big CBS, if you guys enjoyed the pre and post game content, because I think a lot of people, like especially Paramount Plus, like I had it on a screen while I was doing this other thing, which I really wish I hadn't gone and done, because I really wish I was at the game instead.
Live and learn.
Hey, it was a science experiment gone wrong. Jerica writes in, the mid-game interviews were not good. It's hard. A coach is trying to study the game. This isn't like real football where you have a 2-minute break and like walk me through it. So I agree with that. But anyways, let's get on to the watch party. I was there early to help paint, and then I took off. Talk to me. I heard it was like one of the best ones of the season so far. Walk me through, walk listeners that didn't get to attend, and sell me on why people need to show up to these dang watch parties.
I can describe it for you. But for listeners who maybe haven't had an opportunity to come out, I would maybe suggest looking up, what is it, Anchor and Blue Crew from Matt Jean. He does little vlogs for all of our games, home and away. So those kind of give you a good vibe check. It's kind of funny too. He pointed out to me about Natesky. I didn't realize this, and then I couldn't not see it, about how when he was getting too into the game and he was like being like an air traffic controller, telling the team like, send the ball here, send the That was hilarious. He's a great guy. But yeah, it was really good. There's a lot of people there for Saturday at 4 p.m. I know that there's a reality for the diehards that probably some of these away games, they probably plan some events with family and things like that. Not everyone is going to make every single game, but that there are a significant amount of fans, including Defiance. It's like our kind of section was packed. Like there was maybe one empty seat. It was like standing room only. So it was a good vibe. Even when we went down, no one left. We kind of all had that hope. We've seen recently the team kind of fight and pull back, and yeah, it was great. It's always good to hang out with the boys and girls.
Good save there. Got to keep it all inclusive. Way to go. So let's get into this game. Let's actually talk soccer. 23 minutes in, we're really killing it. We got the repeat, right? Wrong Wednesday formation guess again. Correct. Not hard when it's not broken. You just don't have to fix anything. So we saw the 3-5-2, and we saw it with Koke in goal, with Stoneman, Yao, and Darce in that back three. Turnbull, Holstead, Ibarra, Quizera, and Fuson in that midfield. And then Chico and Williams up in the top two there. I think what was more interesting on the night was the fact that we got a lot of the DCFC prediction wrong. And that's because it looks like Coach Dickio is really trying to figure out what he's going to do over the course of the next 8 games. And they had 4 different people who have not actually been starters in quite a few games come on to face Detroit, or to face Rhode Island FC early on. So you had Brett Levi's, Daniel Espeleta, Yazid Matthews, and Elvis Ammo all come as starters who either subbed or did not play against us in the first leg. Yazid Matthews and Elvis Amos specifically, they really gave us a lot of problems in the second half of our home leg. So to see them, maybe either Dickie, you said, you know what, they were so impactful as substitutions last time. I want to see them get another shot at starting. But a lot of the players that we thought we would have to face didn't come in initially as starters on the night.
Yeah, and some of this is expected. Detroit's been struggling a little bit as of recently, and like you mentioned, they've got a pretty tough schedule coming up for them. And we're kind of in different areas, right? RIFC is hot right now.
So hot.
So coach doesn't want to, like, he wants to put out the same lineup every game as much as he can. Whereas Detroit, they're trying to find that lineup that works for them because they've had some success this season. They just haven't had that consistency.
Which is foreshadowing for when we get to the Indy preview, because I think Indy is going through a little bit of Detroit City adjustments themselves right now. But to start off with this game summary, you know, I think if you're a Detroit City fan, you're the angriest of all. You had some clever pins made to try to make fun of us. You were showing up loud. There was a little bit of political situations going on with Detroit City supporters group. We're not going to cover that because we stay very clear away. Like we joke about not an MLS podcast, not a USL2 pod. We are not a political podcast. But the supporters group definitely struggled with some things that had ended up happening to them. But so DCFC, they think they're going to win this game. And Clay Holstead's like, you know, I don't want you guys to think that you're going to just like have everything be your way at this point. And you saw that dramatic last, stoppage time equalizer. But what's really interesting for Detroit City now is that because of that, they've lost 6 games with specifically 6 games from winning positions, having dropped 15 points on the table. So when we talk right now how these two teams are literally neck and neck, they're same points right now, just 1 game in hand for Detroit, which will evaporate this upcoming week. 15 points lost. Like we've dropped points from losses at the end of games, which has happened a lot, or we've also had games where neither team scored. So I don't think we've lost nearly as many where there's been some team that's come back from behind and take. I think only Memphis and Sacramento are the only 2 teams that have really stolen points where we had something locked in the bag. So that's interesting to see from Detroit's perspective that they couldn't secure all 3 points on the night. Meanwhile, RIFC scores now in each of their last 8 games. So the scoring streak continues. However, this is the first game where we don't score multiple goals. So that part of the streak, that stat now dies. So, whatever. But we still have 22 goals in this unbeaten run. So, like, that's still nothing to laugh about. And, having scored in the fact that it's the last 7 away games, too, we've also scored. Not every team shows up well when they play against the away legs. So this is a big deal for Rhode Island FC. We mentioned Clay Holstead, a.k.a. I won't say the nickname yet, but it was very good. And I'm really excited to share that in a second. But Clay gets on the scoreboard after the Louisville game. That was the last time, which let's just jump ahead to this. He did the golf swing for the rocket that he shot in Louisville, and Ben Morris goes and scores. I don't think that was golf worthy.
I don't think so either. It's weird. If it was against anyone else, I would just think maybe he's a James Ward-Prowse fan or Steph Curry or whatever. He's just stealing the celebration from them. But the fact that he did it against us, maybe there's some bad blood there.
Did Clay Holstead go full Michael Jordan and take that personal?
Maybe. Do you think it's possible for Clay to score a quote unquote normal goal?
I haven't seen it. I don't think he can do it. I think if he doesn't have at least,
it's
20
not,
yards, he's not shooting.
Worth his time. It's like, I let someone else do that.
No, I mean it, and it's so weird too, because like I think a really good comparison for what I'm seeing out of Clay Holstead at this point, not at the same levels, but it reminds me of Carlos Vela out of MLS, where everyone knows that if Carlos Vela gets to the top right corner with his left boot, he's gonna do some damage, and he can do that shot every day, and he'll make it 9 out of 10 times. And if you give gaps and space to defend,
you never let Ian Robin cut in the side.
Yes, there you go. It's an even better one. And so it surprises me now that people don't know better than to trap and lock down a Clay Holstead at the top right corner of the box. And, I don't know if they were afraid to foul because there was so few seconds left in the game, and it was the top as he was moving through, and they kind of thought, we'll let him cut through, but there's no way he'll get that shot off. He was much closer than he has been in other times, but you don't let Clay Holstead go from distance of any kind. Like it's just a mistake having, ever done that. And so we see that, but I want to talk about the goal against us real fast. We're jumping around here a little bit. The most important thing on the night for me was Rhode Island FC has now conceded their 10th goal to an opposing substitute. Ben Morris may have come on and started the last game, but this one he comes in as a substitute. We are now dead last or first place, whatever you want to call it, on letting subs come in. Like, is that something we need to start watching this more detailed?
We're the best.
Are we the best or are we the worst?
Like I had mentioned last time, we're popping up in some really good categories, and there's some other ones that are like, hey, at least we're getting mentioned.
And then on top of that, Rhode Island FC has also conceded 11 goals now in the last 15 minutes of the second half. So we're just talking end of game at this point. And no team has conceded more in the USL this year. That's a problem, right?
It's not great. It's not sustainable, but as long as the team continues to find a way to fight and claw back into the game, it's fine for now. It's just one of those things that they kind of have to keep in the back of their mind that, it's something that they need to be aware of and try and work on. We still have a little ways until the postseason. But for now, I wouldn't put their heads down. They're still unbeaten.
Would you rather see them let in goals earlier and be able to close out games, like whether that's because we claw back or we outscore at that point, like, or is it a sign of the mental capability of this team to make sure that they don't make mistakes? Because like that Morris goal, that was a couple of that was loose balls, that was passes, and then it just kind of got scooped in and shot. It wasn't like a really authentic build up and run of play.
It was just a little bit of chaos there. We just made 2 substitutions. Sometimes it just happens that when people come in and they're switching spots and then they're just not up to the speed of the game. Sometimes things like that just happen. At the end of the day, other teams sometimes are going to score and there's nothing you can do about it. It's how do you react and how do you respond to these goals?
So then just to jump to that real fast, do you think then, because I thought was really interesting was, we can talk about DCFC's defense on the night. I think they did a really good job. But, when they didn't look like it necessarily and what your eyeball tests would say, it seemed like they had a designed containment that they wanted to implement against Rhode Island FC. That's not to say that Rhode Island FC didn't break out occasionally, because we saw the Chico goal that was promised but didn't happen. But coach definitely tried to change things up early on with the arrival of Haribo at the half. So people playing Marky Bar on the card collector app need to be really, really careful moving forward.
Yeah, that seems to be the move going forward.
But then we saw a double sub of the wingbacks. And so I want to ask you, because I think that's kind of what led to the goal, because it started on the outside, came in. We had 2 new players in the midfield trying to get their feet under them, literally, and that goal gets scored. Is that because that coach, in your opinion, coach saw something where he needed to bring them off to save them for minutes? Because the wingbacks are the ones getting the most mileage out of the next 3 games, right? Is that what contributed to that with this rotation need, or were they just having such a, not I would say a great game, but they weren't picking the locks as much with the chances that they got? Do you see that as what kind of led to that goal?
I think he's just managing their minutes. Detroit is just a stubborn team. I wouldn't point at any single person and say, oh, they had a phenomenal game. Not that I'm saying the team was bad, but Detroit was not making it easy. They were getting in our faces. They were cutting, they were blocking passing lanes. I think I have it somewhere later in the notes, 16 interceptions. They were not letting us play our game.
They had 16 interceptions, 16 clearances, and attempted 20 tackles out of the mix.
Yeah, so Joe J and Steven do a lot of defending for us as well too. So you take 2 of the defenders out, a corner. I think it was a corner, right? Yeah, it just, hindsight is 2020.
So let's talk about it, right? Because Detroit was a little not streaky in this game, but they were hot and cold in different parts, depending on which half you want to talk about. They were even in both halves when it came to shot creation, but they arguably did more with less in the second half as Rhode Island FC got into the game and controlled more of the possession. The XG was higher for it in the first half for Rhode Island FC, but they had nothing to show for it. But I want to talk about Noah's. I heard this online. I saw this in some of the comments in the Discord later. His laziness. It's hard to remember sometimes that, like, we have a couple of new fans that are in soccer now, and they come to us, and I don't know why, because we should never be the ones teaching soccer. But a couple of people privately messaged us and said, "Hey, like, I don't understand, why didn't Noah do more to get that goal in the net?" A couple of fans said, "Hey, like, I understand that if he had touched it, it would have been offsides, but like, why not body block for that, take a foul, maybe then convert it to a penalty if need be?" And I think it's important that we talk about why Noah didn't try to body block and shield the ball.
Yeah, so because Noah was in an offside position, for him to interfere with the play, like, he becomes quote unquote active. So he was doing his best to try and shield and force the defender to kind of make a run around him. But if he does too much, he risks the goal being called off. And it's that thing where he doesn't know that it's not going to go over. He's trying to do his best to, like, watch it go over and be an obstruction without being an obstruction. But if he gets in the way of an active player, then the goal's going to get called offsides.
Yeah. So there's nothing. He had a ringside seat to watch. I mean, really an incredible defensive clearance, right? Like, you want to see that happen for your team, not for the other team, and he just got a ringside seat for that.
Chico's header just needed a little more gusto, but it was also, he was practically outside the box.
Oh, yeah,
there's not a lot there we could have done.
Right. Maybe any other day of the week that goes in, but just not on that case on the night.
Yeah, maybe if they weren't jet lagged.
All right, so let's get into some of the bad news, because the goal, I want to end on a highlight. I want to end on a positive note, and that is, this game was pretty chippy. Detroit took it to us physically, mentally. We saw JJ Williams go down early in the first half with, I thought he wasn't getting up from that impact, that collision. The broadcasters were even talking, like, after his sports hernia, like, that's the worst kind of injury and, like, impact spot to get hit. Williams returns to his feet and plays until he's subbed, but then Isaac Anking comes into the game in the 76th minute and is injured and taken off in the 84th minute.
Yeah, it's unfortunate to see him go down. There was another kind of injury concern earlier on. Was it James Murphy? He went in for like a tackle with JJ Williams, and they kind of had, like, knees. There was another challenge later on too, where, like, I want to be fair to other players. Mistakes happen, but, like, kind of looked like he was going for his head. Like, they were, like you said, they were kind of playing a little chippy there. In the broadcast, you could see the Detroit supporters group had a banner that said, like, the most hated supporters in the league. I don't know if the team kind of embodies that too, and they're trying to out heel Phoenix, maybe.
Each conference needs a heel, right?
Yeah, but they were definitely playing a little physical, but then also, it's part of the game, and you kind of have to just accept it and maybe hope that the ref will either not call it or challenge the players on it. But it felt like sometimes they were going down a little too easy, and it was that kind of dichotomy of, they were tackling hard, but then they were falling down like flies.
Right. So let's talk about what I do know with Anking, and that is, I don't know a lot. I do know that Anking did not travel with the team down to Indy after the game, and needed to get checked out for whatever it is that's going on with him. And I know that also Gabby Alves, who posted on his Instagram stories, he's now down in Indy for the game. So, when you think about the players that you can take, the team traveled immediately following the result in Detroit and headed down to Indy to get ready. So they did not fly home and then, like, rest, reset, and go out again. They went directly from the Detroit game down. So there is a player rotation there. Now, If that's the case, what I don't know is what exactly is the circumstance with Anking. It was enough that he needed to go home, but it's not something where we have any other additional information. Now, normally when I ask the club for this kind of info, it's one of two things. It's like, hey, we'll share it with you, but we'll share it closer to the day. So normally we get injury updates on Thursdays, and even then sometimes they'll kind of be a little tactical about how they share things. But when this one, because it's so early in the week, and two, I don't think that everyone necessarily knows yet what's going on. This is one of two things, right? It's either one, everything's fine, but they don't know like what the next steps are. So the communication package isn't ready to go so that we can understand when Aang King will return to the pitch and he'll re-enter the squad. Maybe it's just a knock at that point and he re-enters in. Or two, it's so bad that like they need to understand how they're going to get this information ready and prepared to go out to fans. And we may hear something that we don't want to hear. I have no bearing. I have no speculation on it. It's one of those things where as of right now, we just know he's not with the team in Indy. So outside of that, I'm hoping that it's a knock or it's a slight contusion and he heals up and we get him back. We get the return of Aang King again, and we go from there. And we just got to throw that good, mojo out there in the world because Aang King has a history of some really freak accidents, and I just want to make sure that that's not something that continues. So I'm putting in good hopes, good vibes that we'll see him again on the pitch soon. But we should hear more from the club I don't know if we'll hear before Hartford, or if we'll hear like right after that, but we should get some more information then. But as of right now, he's not with the team in Indy.
Yeah, hopefully it turns out it's just a little knock. We'll see him back soon.
Exactly. So let's get to Clay Golstad. And I say Clay Golstad because one, the club has kind of picked up that moniker. So again, another nickname that's been thrown out there, but also because the fans, they demanded. We put out the post of which nickname you'd want between Clay Golstad, Clay Holstud, Mr. Bangers, and Top Bin Clay. Pretty widespread on the selections there. No definitive winner, but still Clay Golstad in the top percentile there.
Yeah, it seems like maybe the jury is still out on that one. But Clay Golstad, I can roll with that one.
You score goals like that in the 90th plus, you're allowed to do whatever you want. And speaking of 90th plus, I want to put this slide up here because I thought this was a fantastic bit of information. I kind of felt like after seeing that goal that we've had a lot of like close nail biters coming in across the finish line in stoppage time. And I didn't realize exactly how many had happened so far in the season. So for those of you following along on the video, we got the slide up. But for those listening, we've had a lot of games this season that have ended in basically stoppage time changes. So it goes all the way back to the very first game, right? We've got the own goal, or the Mark Doyle special, as I like to call it, in the 92nd minute. And then on 4/16 in the Open Cup, we had the Charlotte Independence game. And yeah, it's not regular season, but whatever, I'm counting it. With the extra time, 115th minute Steven Turnbull equalization that took that game to penalties. Then we had on 4/26 against Phoenix, it was 89th minute, but like I went back and looked at the clock. It was like 10 seconds before it would have been into the 90 plus. So we had Clay Holsted. We still lost that game. And ironically, Phoenix put up another one in stoppage time against us. And then, of course, we had the 5:25 dual speciality of Fuson and Aang King in the 91st and 96th minute. At 6:26 versus El Paso, we had another 91st minute performance from Fuson. And then in the 7-5, now one of the most notorious games of all time, 95th minute, Aang King scores to equalize in that late minute. And then I'm giving Haribo the July 27th, North Carolina 87th minute. I like round up a little bit at this point.
Yeah, close enough.
And then on August 3rd, we now have Clay Holsted with the 93rd minute. So we have a lot of goals being scored for this team to change our fate. And at the same time, we've let in a lot of plus 90-minute goals as well. Tampa's got one, Phoenix has one, Sacramento's probably hurts me. I don't know. Like Memphis just felt like we lost control of the game, but Sacramento's just felt like they didn't deserve it. Like that game should have been ours to win. Charlotte, they scored first in the added time, again adding the Open Cup. Louisville got one. And then that Memphis where they got two in one sitting there. So like lots of goals are being had in the 90th plus minute there.
Yeah, even when we go back to earlier on in the season when the team was drawing a lot more matches, or even on a few unfortunate circumstances, losses, this team still had fight in them, and they were still trying to claw back and get those late goals. We just see the team not putting themselves in as bad positions by making as many mistakes as we have earlier seasons. We've kind of sorted a little bit of that out. So we're not digging ourselves out of like a giant, 6-foot hole. It's just, hey, I'm knee deep. It's cool. I can get out of this.
So that being said, DCFC is tied with us in points. They're going to be something we need to move through. We've now played both games though for the conference for the year. Is this a good showing or a bad showing? Because like there's a part of me that always says any points you can take on the road are points that matter, and it's the ones at home you never want to give away freely or cheaply. Like give me a 30-second summary of how important do you think this result was, and what do you think this game really felt like for you?
I think the match was important. I think maybe we saw it's hard to say if there are some chinks in the armor in terms of like we saw it took us all the way to the 90 plus minute to draw, right? The team had some good chances. They couldn't capitalize them early on. Maybe that was just some unluckiness on our part. But as much as I want the streak to go on forever, at some point it'll end. Maybe in a few games.
We will never lose, Jason. What are you talking about?
Maybe in 38 games.
This is the Refuse to Lose podcast.
But we could have been talking about a very, very different match here, right? If he did not score that banger, we would say, hey, we got out with a 1-0 loss. We would have been ruining those chances that we didn't take in that first half. So I think this is just it, like with a small sample size, this is just a stubborn team that we just played against. We got a point away. I think we'd just be happy that we got out of there with that. I think if we look at the series as a whole, I think when you look back at that Detroit home match, that wasn't a great match from us. I think that, and I'm not saying that we should have beat them, but I just felt that the team really didn't perform. So it was hard leading into this match to kind of set our expectations, because I couldn't gauge whether or not Detroit was a quote unquote good team or not, because we just did not see RIFC show up against them at home.
Right. It's going to be interesting because Tampa Bay was the one on my radar that was like, okay, we gotta see what we can do on the second leg. We got Detroit first, right? And we still haven't played Charleston second time yet. We've got Louisville in the bag. Indy, we're gonna find out tomorrow. But these like top 5 perennials, like right now, to me, it looks like Detroit gets to say like they got the best of us for the year, and we'll see what we can do against Tampa. So for me, like rivalries notwithstanding, this will be one of the games next year that I'll be these will be one of the squads I want to be the more invested in understanding how do we break them apart moving forward. So
yeah, as you mentioned, that it's interesting. We're coming up to play Indy again for the second time. So I think that'll be important to kind of see and understand where this team lies on the table. Because if you talk about, I know we beat Louisville, but if you also look at the way that they completely destroy and dismantle teams, like we're not there yet. Charleston, we still got one more match against them. We hold them at home. And then Tampa Bay is another one where we're not sure about. They seem like those top 3 seem to be very strong teams. If we can, let's say, maybe beat Indy, like maybe this is a top 5 team in the East,
right?
At least for this year.
And we haven't lost. We talked about this last week. We haven't lost a lot of games, and the games that we have lost have normally been against teams above the playoff line. So it's like earned losses in a certain degree. So let's get into the table standings. I think that Detroit has passed us with the goal, with the equalization, and kind of where we need to go as the second leg of this. I think we're well positioned. It looks like the rotation happened enough that coach has some tactical options coming up with how he wants to start or play players in this second game of the week. But let's get into those table standings before we jump into that.
Yeah, so if we take a look at the standings here, so after this past weekend's result, RIFC is on a 6-11-4 record. Draw Kings are back, baby.
Let's go.
Still in 8th place, though, with 29 points, tied with Detroit, who still has more wins on the year. When we try and take a look at the teams around us, there's actually like the point spread there is really tight if you exclude the top teams that we had mentioned who are kind of running away with it. Detroit is going to host Pittsburgh, who has won 3 of the last 5 and undefeated in the last 4 matches. That'll be this weekend. Or no, is that one? I think that actually might be Wednesday too. And then as we look towards the weekend, Loudoun is only 1 point ahead of us, and their next match on Saturday is away to Oakland Roots, who have been kind of getting better as the
Dom
season
Dwyer
goes.
Oakland Roots, yeah.
Yeah, as the season's gone along, they've gotten a little stronger, so that could potentially be a tough one for them. Loudoun is an interesting team, though. They kind of seem to be all over the place. They beat people they shouldn't, and they lose to teams they don't. So who knows what's going on with them. Birmingham is 3 points ahead of us right now. Their next opponents are Indy. So this is going to be a long week for Indy because that's going to be on the weekend. And then Birmingham is also away to Monterey Bay FC. I have them in there twice.
I will say this, Monterey Bay is an interesting one because they just fired their coach, which no one makes sense of. Frank Yellup didn't deserve to be fired, in my opinion. So we'll see what happens on that. But
quick clarification there. I just misread what I wrote. Birmingham and Indy are both 3 points ahead of us. I'm sorry. And Birmingham is away to Monterey Bay on the weekend.
Right. Meanwhile, Indy, man, what a bad time to be Indy 11 right now. As just mentioned, Indy 11 is on 32 points with a 9.58 record and now a -2 goal difference after a smashing, just murder from the Charleston Battery. They assaulted and batteried Indy 11. But they've had a bad run of form since we last played them. So, minus them picking up that U.S. Open Cup match against Kennesaw United, excluding the match, they have 3 draws and 2 losses in the last 5 league matches. They currently have a lower goals per match and a higher goals conceded per match. That's not a stat that you want to see go those directions. I don't know what that will mean long term for this game. Usually when a team gets pantsed as badly as Indy did, and we'll talk about the significance of that pantsing, sometimes teams rally and they go, "Hey, never again. We're gonna right this ship right now." Or it's the canary in the coal mine, and things are about to get a lot darker and more desperate for these players as they get trapped in the goal mine of the Eastern Conference. Let's get into the injuries as we know it for this game coming up. Amos Shapiro-Thompson, we're hearing, is getting closer and closer, but he's not quite there.
Almost ready.
So we've been hearing that he may start to make some appearances by the end of the month, and so look out for that. And then Isaac Anking, we know, is not going to be at this game just because he's not there right now. But we don't know the extent, if there is one, for his injury. The rest of the players, Kofi Chumesi, Nate Silvera, I think there's one more that keep getting listed, but they're not injured.
Gabby Alves was getting listed on there for a while, but we just
we know
earlier,
Alves. Yeah, with his post, he's with the team. You don't travel if you're injured, so he's going to be a weapon. I don't think he's going to get a start, just because he hasn't played minutes since before Louisville, actually before Memphis. So I can't believe it's been that long since we've had him.
Yeah, it doesn't feel like it's been that long, but now that you say it, that's the last time I remember seeing him out there.
So let's get into these predictions here on the formation. What do we got? Do we think it's still going to be the 3-5-2?
I don't think we're going to change formation. And to a certain extent, I think we're probably just going to line up with the same team. We just might see some more rotation earlier on, like you had mentioned, for that kind of 50th minute Ibarra for that kind of switch. But we're probably going to see Koke in net, Nadarse, Yao, and Stoneman in the back. That midfield 5 of Quizera, Ibarra, Fuson, Holstad, and Turnbull, with Williams and Chico up top.
I agree with that. I think the only difference you may see is just depending on if Williams needs some spare time just because of the mileage. Maybe you see like a Mark Doyle come in. I think Fuson is too valuable in that midfield area, even though you could move him up to striker. I wouldn't be surprised if we see Doyle get the start on this game.
Yeah, if there are going to be any changes, I think the back 3 is going to remain untouched. I think your holding midfielders and your wide players are probably going to stay the same. It's that kind of attacking trio that we have there where we might see a little bit of change because those guys are running a lot And we kind of expect our wingbacks to do a lot of running, and we'll probably see maybe another 60th minute change or something for them.
Yeah, I really wouldn't be surprised if we see the likes of more traditional 4-4-2 at some point in this game, where especially if we can score early, and we'll talk about why that's so significant here in a minute, where, you know, if we can get up, we immediately bench Quizera or Turnbull, bring in Alves, get him some minutes, or Smith for that matter, and then you see an immediate trio swap when needed to bring Connor McGlynn, Joe Brito, and Zach Harivo into the game as fast as possible, and then give our strikers, at least one of them, maybe even pull both Chico and Williams out and let Fuson move up. Fuson, for what everyone's telling me, including the front office staff, that guy can just run. Like, apparently he runs like 8 miles after a game, allegedly.
For fun.
Running for fun, so that'll be really interesting to go through. And then Indy 11, they're a little bit harder to predict right now. Like I said at the beginning of the episode here, they're in a kind of an experimental phase, to be honest, and I don't really know how much of this is going to be right. So we're kind of going off of two things here with this prediction. One is we're going off of their most recent 2 formations that they've used, but then we're also partnering and pairing that with what they deployed against us in the July 5th game. They've had 5 or 6 games since, but this coach is trying in that 5 or 6 game run where they failed. He's trying to figure out what exactly they can do to change their fortune as well. Because Sean McCauley is definitely not someone who's going to be rigid in a system if they're not getting results. So we anticipate that Hunter Solt will still stay in goal, and then you got Ben Afemu, Josh O'Brien, and Adrian Diz. Diz is an interesting newcomer to this. He's one of their mainstays on the back 3, but he didn't play in the game against us. I don't know if it was injury or like discipline, or just maybe he also had like travel requirements during the it wasn't the Gold Cup, what was the Copa? I have no idea. But then in that midfield 4, you're going to see Ben Mines, Cam Lindley, newcomer Logan Needlinger, and Aiden Stanley. Needlinger has been substituting in for a couple of different cases, specifically around Lawrence Wooten, which that name should ring a bell because he scored against us in the last showing of these teams. And then up front, you're going to see probably most likely Douglas Martinez, Augie Williams, and newcomer Romario Williams from the one and only Hartford Athletic, and also formerly Atlanta United fame. I love, if you look at this image, he's so new that they don't have an Indy 11 stock photo, but there's no Hartford Athletic stock photo that I could easily find either. So I had to roll the tape back a little bit further. So having said that, it looks like there's a little bit of chop and change here based on that current form. And I still think we'll see some movement. So I don't think that this prediction is going to be entirely accurate. But I do want to call out that, Sebastian Guinzotti is lethal. He's been playing in the forward position and being a lot of offense creation. And like I mentioned with Lawrence Wooten, also Elliot Collier not in this prediction for starting 11, and he also scored against us. So 2 players that were lethal against us in the last leg may not actually, even see that starting opportunity be riding the pine. I don't know if McCauley is going to rotate again and do more chop and change. I don't know if these players are in a funk or they have to protect their minutes because they've got a big leg of games themselves. They have not only some of the hardest lineup to go through, harder than what we have to deal with New Mexico United, a very hot Las Vegas Lights, but they also have that Open Cup game coming in just a week and a half or so against Sporting Kansas City. So that's really the wrong time for them to have to play a team like us and deal with all of these other kind of adversities that are going to be on the pitch over the next couple of games.
Yeah, it's interesting if we look back to our initial preview for this team. One of the players I had picked to watch out was Jack Blake, one of the midfielders. He didn't even play against us. And then as I go back and look at it, he hasn't played since some match in June. So I think, and there's a few other players that have been noticeably absent. I think that they have some injury concerns. They don't on their Twitter post, they don't have ortho right.
Nobody likes to. It's such a shame because there's betting
their
going on.
Websites don't it's really hard for some other teams to find any sort of injury information. And I'm not going to go back and listen through a bunch of their podcasts or something. If it's not on their website or any their Twitter or any of the social media, they apparently don't want anyone to know. So yeah, it's kind of hard to look at that team and kind of see what's going to go on there. They've had some struggles recently.
Some big struggles.
Yeah, we talked about another one last time, a player to watch, Aiden Stanley. He has 7 assists. He hasn't had a single one since then. It was been kind of hot.
You
so
cursed this team. It was you. Good to know.
I think they've got some other issues going on.
So let's talk about
maybe
those issues.
A Garber issue. I don't know.
Oh, it's the graveyard and the greed of Garber that are messing with Indy 11.
Yeah, Don Gerber. I don't know.
Oh man, so Indy 11 are struggling right now at the moment as they've now failed to score. I don't mean win. I mean score a goal in over 319 minutes. So for those of you that can count, that's only 3 games, but for a team that is, known for scoring, that is kind of a big deal to have to be dealing with that stat. And then further, Indy 11 has failed to win in their last 6 games in the USL Championship right now. So much so that the last time that they did win was actually when they advanced in the Open Cup against Atlanta, and maybe they just used up all their good luck because they, after the tie with us, it's just all been downhill for them. What's worse is Indy 11 seems to be entrapping themselves in problems early in games and have now conceded 9 goals in the first 15 minutes of the second half. And there's only one team with a worse stat this year, and that's Miami FC. So they're now losing in all kinds of directions. If they get scored on first, they can't get out of their way, and they are getting scored on first in the second half more than any other team. So this is a team that's struggling to create offense. They're a team that's struggling to maintain defense, and it looks like the coach right now and his solution is like, well, what if we try different players and see what's going? A lot of times coaches will be like, hey, I believe in this team, I believe in the formation, things just aren't clicking yet. And it doesn't seem to be that is the case with Indy 11. I was going to say that despite the recent form and the consecutive number of losses and draws, that they've just had a couple of like wrong time, wrong place situations going against them. But that was until the ghost of 2023 playoffs returned. And like we said earlier, Charleston beat the literal brakes off the Indy car 5-0 in a nightmare of relived trauma from their postseason last year. Like everyone thought Indy was the team that was going to take, like Charleston was good, but Charleston was not the main team on everyone's radar. And Indy, everyone thought Indy was going to go deeper into those playoffs.
I know we're trying to stay on topic better, but just a funny thing I noticed in chat, Somos Mas podcast is confused as to why you're wearing sunglasses.
Well, because there's a famous song, I wear my sunglasses at night. So Somos Mas, good to see you guys. We actually, so these Pit Vipers came on as a good luck at the beginning of our run of form, and now I can't take them off until we lose, so that we can't say it's the Pit Vipers. And trust me, I want them off at this point, but they are basically glued to my face when we record and at least at away games. I will be wearing them tomorrow at the Guild for those coming. Scott reached out to us in email, and if he can make it to the game, he will also be wearing his Pit Vipers. So who knows? Maybe we will start a new thing there.
As we get back to the game here, though, you talk about how does a team respond after just getting absolutely thrashed 5-0. Well, the first thing you're going to want to do is kind of shore up that defense. If you can't go out and win that next match, you at least try not to lose, or at least try not to lose badly, right? That's where you park the bus and you're like, hey, if we can at least lose 1-0, or we can sneak out a draw, maybe even try and get like a counterattack goal or like a cheeky set piece, they're probably just practicing like defending.
Right. And Indy 11, for their credit, they're not a bad team, right? Like, especially at home, they have mostly positive results. The recent form does say something to that. They've had some losses that they probably shouldn't have had. But again, that goes back to if I had been able to answer the question before the Charleston game, it would have been like, hey, just, sometimes things don't go your way. They're not a team that tends to lose at home. And when they do have goals get scored against them, it's usually just like one, right? They're not getting completely beat out. So I anticipate that as pendulums swing, Indy 11 is going to take the lessons, the lumps that they earned on the night against against Charleston Battery, and try to have like a reflection moment of what can they do to stop us, because they know we're coming and they know that we can score goals on them as well, just the same way that they can score against us. So I imagine instead of maybe taking it to us this time, they're going to be trying to anticipate how they can, like you said, shore up that defense. I want to ask this because this is the most interesting thing I've had shared with me about any game preview, and that's from our quant, the Hillside, had an interesting prediction on the game this Wednesday, and they wrote in RIFC is at or near the bottom of the league, as in fewest, for both penalties awarded 1 and penalties conceded 2. But as we all know, both penalties conceded were converted, and the one that we were awarded with Chico was not. We're the only team in the championship not to score via a penalty kick this season, and Indy is one of 2 teams not to allow a goal via PK all season. So, with the regression to the mean and whatnot, both sides of this equation are due tomorrow, and we will basically have a PK in front of our eyes. I have been tracking
in the stars.
I have been tracking the PK stat because I didn't notice that we were not the only team to score, but I did know that we haven't had a lot of PKs for or against. I think with the exception of the Colorado game, really we play a mostly clean game, but I didn't realize that we're the only team left not to score. So, in the spirit of this statistical anomaly and hoping that it doesn't happen, but maybe because it's been willed into existence now, if we see one tomorrow, there's going to be some questions asked of our quant. But in the meantime, Jason, who takes the penalty kick for us if it comes down to a penalty tomorrow? And does it get saved or does it go in?
Interesting. I think Chico would definitely want to try and make up for his previous miss, especially now that he's got some more goals under his belt. I imagine, though, there's been some sort of conversation since then about what the PK list is. I wouldn't be surprised because Williams was not on the pitch at the time. He kind of was still, if not back, maybe a few weeks out. So I think Williams could be a shout. And then sometimes your set piece takers can also be very good penalty takers. So I wouldn't be surprised if, I bet Marky Barra could hit a good penalty,
I'd love to see that. I would love to see Marky Barra do his thing. That being said, I don't know who our weapon specialist is, so I'd love to know who actually can do damage in these moments. Is it Ibarra? Is it Williams? I just don't want to see it be Chico again because I'm sure that there's an ask that he redeems himself. But the reality is this: if he, my dog, if he fails again, what kind of slump could that put him into? That kind of creates a situation where we can't afford Chico. He already just finally got out of whatever it was that was going on in his headspace as a result of that PK miss. We can't afford for that to happen again.
Yeah, I think he will want to redeem himself, but at the same time, it could also cause some more damage for him in terms of his scoring ability to then also fail a penalty. As we look on to some players to watch, Hunter Solt was a goalkeeper that we had talked about last time. He's on loan from the Portland Timbers in Anchorage, Alaska, because they have an affiliate USPL team up there. Crazy, huh? I think there's only 3 Alaskan teams, so I don't know how that works up there. He took over from Yannick Otto, who appeared to be struggling at the time. And then before this last match, we saw Indy was actually doing a lot better than when they had that bad start. They're on kind of a poor run right now. When you let in 5 goals, you're not going to get a good rating. I don't know if I'd go back and look at that and say any of that was any of his fault. He didn't have much to do in the previous match before that in a 0-0 draw against Tulsa. So he's still young. It might be hard for a goalkeeper to kind of mentally get back into it and just, go business as usual after getting thrashed 5-0. I don't know where his headspace is at after that. So that could be an interesting kind of watch there for this next match.
Fun little side note for one of those things that people see in the production side. In the Indy 11 game on the 5th of July, there was a last minute concern because the starting 11 lineup card had Yannick in as the starter, but with Solt's number. So everyone was trying to which one is it? Because you've given us one piece of this information is wrong. And from an announcing perspective, it's not the end of the world, but again, for like the player lineup submissions to like all the betting sites, like those things have to be done. And everyone was freaking out, like which player is coming out. So someone had to go down to the locker room and they were like, we already gave you the card. Like, yeah, we just need you to confirm audibly, like who is your starting keeper for the night. So fun, one of those fun things that you just kind of hear about. You never know unless you work on the mean internal side of soccer operations, I guess.
Yeah, I think people would be surprised that I've got to peek behind the curtain, as they say. There's definitely some last minute shenanigans going on sometimes where someone passes the wrong. I mean, fans know firsthand too where the that lineup was given out that was incorrect a few months back. Sometimes these things happen.
Yeah. So listen, we know this is going to be a nail biter of a game. We know that both teams have shown that they can demonstrate scoring. That being said, Rhode Island FC's both teams are ironically coming into this with mid-late, games in the middle of the week. Somos Moss asked us to make sure that they get worn out to take on New Mexico United on Sunday. We've got to deal with Hartford. We've asked fans all week, like, which game is more important to them. Optics wise, I think a lot of people have chimed in that the El Clamico is the bigger thing, but a lot of people think that points are within our reach, whether it's 1 or 3 points. So one becomes 2, or well, actually no, 1 doesn't become 2, but 3 can become 6 points on that. What does Rhode Island FC need to get right to take away any points, and what kind of points do you think they'll be taking?
Yeah, so the team came out slow last time against Indy. We saw them go down in the first half. They can't afford to let that happen again. But also when we go back and look at that squad, it was a slightly different squad. We were playing Holstad in the back. Stoneman hadn't actually returned. He was on the bench, but he didn't play any minutes. Fuson only played the second half, right? We saw Brito in the first half. So that being slightly different, I still think we might see a slightly different team here too. Although we just predicted the same one, we don't know though. If the team is hot, I imagine coach is going to want to just play the same one over and over again. So it's important that whoever coach does put out there, if he goes to his bench and decides to pour some of the kind of second string guys to a certain extent, they really need to kind of step up and put in a shift, because like you said, there are points within reach and we can kind of climb that table very quickly here if we play our cards right.
And we've commented so many times that Mark Doyle, Noah Fuson before when he was in a substitute role, Isaac Anking, now Zach Harivo, they all have this super sub programming that when they get their minutes, they make the most of it. So I think you're right on that. I think for me, it's kind of a question of which way, when you say points, are we really talking? Are we talking to win? Because the reality is they need to score first and they need to score fast, whether that's in the first half or right out the gate in the second half, and take it to Indy directly. I think you're spot on about the fact that, like, last time we were chasing for a majority of the game. And so if we can kind of take that power back, so to speak, and get out there early, then we should be able to put Indy 11 in a position that they can't adjust very easily and maybe kind of try to steal out the night with all 3 points. But that being said, they really need to focus on that defense primarily, because when you think about like where we've been leading goals, especially last minute goals, what Indy's going to try to do on this game, what we saw against Detroit City FC, our defenders need to be able to show that in the big games, especially going down this stretch as we think about postseason, that they can keep teams that are going through goal droughts off of the score sheet, right? Like this Indy 11 can't score right now. We shouldn't be the catalyst for them to figure that out.
Teams consolation goals.
Exactly. Like I'm of the opinion that, we don't want to be the team. Like if Indy 11 comes into this and says we need to play defense first, and they're out for like the 0-0, like they just want the point. I'm okay with a 0-0 performance than I am losing like by not scoring first or getting scored on more. So I think that's going to be the more important thing. But that being said, Indy, like I said, has really been doing well at home. So this could be an outlier. It could be spot on, but it's really going to be anyone's guess what we're going to see on the night. I think this is the most difficult game of the year we're going to predict, especially like if this was like, if we were thinking like sports betting, like how crazy is this game to try to understand when that both teams have to think about rotation on the week. Both teams are trying to keep each other at bay because there's points on the table that matter here in terms of table standing. I think that this is going to be anyone's game. And I think that because of the rotation, it's really just what coach puts out the best lineup. Like it's a game of preordained checkers, right? Or like rock, paper, scissors. Who put out rock when the other person put out scissors on the night? So I couldn't tell you, but they got to play fast, and they got to get the goal first, and they need to focus on defense themselves. I don't think this is going to be another 3-3 spectacular like we saw on fireworks in football.
We haven't seen a 5-5 yet, right?
Don't do that.
You would hate to see that, right, with the amount of goals leading in, but that hasn't been crossed off yet.
I would hate to see that, but I wouldn't hate it as much if it was away. I would hate to see 5 goals scored on us at home, but away, there's that idea, like the atmosphere creates problems. Like I guess I could be okay with it. But let's talk about predictions. FOTMob has 40% in Indy 11's favor, 37% with the win to Rhode Island FC, and then 23% draw. So the draw Kings are getting stronger again on that. And last week I predicted a perfect score. You however, predicted a draw as well, so you kind of cheated there, and so you still are up on me by 1 point. But since I got the perfect game, my 10 points to your 11, I still am going first, and I'm thinking this is a 2-2 game. I think Indy 11 finds some way to score goals, especially if we have rotation to contend with on both teams. If this was the same formations, like from a Saturday to a Saturday, I would have a different opinion here, but I think we're going to have a 2-2 game.
My gut feeling tells me 2-1. I don't know. I think part of it has to do with the struggle that they've been having. It seems like they have some injuries. I think they could be pulling a Houston Dynamo, where the league gets sacrificed, but they're going to make it to the Open Cup final. Like they'll get it figured out by the time they have to play Sporting KC. That's what I'm going with.
Okay. The Hillside has 2-2 as well, so logic is on my side for once. So let's get into these questions. We got a few tonight. I want to make sure that we get a chance to talk about them. So take it away with Logan's.
Yeah, so Logan here wants to know, do we know of a USL/Beirne plan for severe weather or otherwise unplayable/untailgateable conditions?
So I don't know about the pregame. I don't know about the tailgate part, but I do know that because I have these like emergency like break in case of glass cards to read in the event of significant weather. And that is that people will be asked to shelter back to their vehicles or into one of the building facilities, depending on the severity. And if it is before the game kicks off, there's like a stay in your car until we provide an updated time for gates to open. I have no idea what that does for like if you're tailgating, if they say pack it down and shut it down, or if they just say like barbecue at your own risk. But that is kind of what it goes on to. The weather is going to be potentially bad. Hurricane or tropical storm Debbie is being a real downer right now, and nobody knows what the weather is going to be like for that Clamico game. And it has a lot of people worried because we're trying to sell out Smithfield. We're trying to fill up the stadium. We could be in for some of the wettest, wildest weather we've had all season.
Nobody likes a Debbie Downer. It should be a little Debbie instead.
Debbie cakes? Heck yeah, let's go. Tim writes in, when, not if, we surpass the record for most ties in a season, do we celebrate, and should Defiance make a banner to hang at Bryant and then Tidewater next season?
Oh, 100% about the banner. We can even sing some dumb songs, Draw Kings, You'll Never Sing That or whatever. I'm down.
I already have an idea for how they can do the banner, so we'll be in contact with the Defiance on what could be done. I'd love to see that banner stay up in like continuation until someone else ever beats it, so like it's just kind of immortalized until it's not. Taras has a question, which I think we kind of answered.
Yeah, we'll just touch on it again real quick. He wants to have any status update on Isaac and King, so we know he is not with the team. He went home. We are wishing him the best, and hopefully it is just a knock and we will see him again soon.
Just like the sniffles in his lower body.
It just, tweaked it a bit and it'll be fine.
Andrew H writes in, back to the Draw Kings. Do we all wear ties the next game after they break the tie record? I did like someone wrote in it should be bow ties, and I think, yeah. What do you think?
Yeah, amber and blue bow ties. I'm down.
Oh, did we just figure out the next? Okay, Rhode Island FC, listen. We know you listen to us. Get that merch ready to go. You can sell it as an exclusive the next game after and just profit off. Like, we'll literally just go buy it at the game. We want to bring our own and
record-breaking amber and blue bow ties,
or just the regular ties too.
Oh,
like,
yeah.
why not? Like, I'll take one. I'll probably wear that at work all the
Right.
time. Then, you know,
business RIFC ties. Yeah.
you'll never sing that either. All right, and then we got one more question here from the great Nate Ski.
What was the TV rating for the game on CBS?
So this is an interesting question. I did reach out to the league, heard some initial chatter, but no confirmed numbers. They did say that the numbers were similar to the performance of the initial game between Indy 11 and Louisville City back for the very first CBS game, but no confirmation there. And similar is a very broad stroke when it comes to like what that can actually infer. I did go back and look at the numbers. They said 362,000 people tuned in to watch the derby between those two teams for that 5-2 thriller. So, you know, does that mean 362,000? No. Does that mean like what's similar? That was like 300,000. I mean, it was on CBS Prime, right? Like whether like people stumbled into it, had nothing else to do, or like I only get all 12 channels on my like antenna dish version, so I guess I'm watching this instead of, you know, infomercials. It's hard to say. They did go out of their way though. Like they didn't. No one said that they beat the record that Indy and Louisville started. So unless they're just still waiting to collect Nielsen data, I think that may be kind of similar to what it is. So that's still great news for the club. Really great showing between the teams, and I think, you know, I think that wasn't the greatest performance for a casual fan, but I think for a soccer diehard, whether you're a Detroit City person or an RIFC person, that game was pretty electric in the final 20 minutes, and that's what you live for, right?
Yeah, there was still some action there. I think the entertainment, you know, not 7 goals, but it was still a good one.
Agreed. So do you want to get people ready for the Indy 11 and I'll cover the Clamico?
Yeah, so RFC continues the away travels as they take on Indy 11 in a midweek brawl on Wednesday, August 7th at 7 p.m. on ESPN Plus. Come join us at the Guild.
And then on Saturday, it's the big one. El Clamico returns as RIFC takes on Hartford Athletic at 7:30 p.m. Tickets are selling out fast, and if you haven't picked one up yet, don't know what you're waiting for. But you can use this QR code on the screen. And for podcast exclusive listeners, reach out to us in DMs if you need a special discount code to buy tickets at a discounted rate. I won't tell you the price. You have to click or find out for yourself, but it is the best deal in town. For those of you that are showing up, make sure to get there early for the special activities and just the sheer volume, as the game is expected to be sold out. And for those of you that attended the first one, it was both a logistical nightmare because it was the very first game. They were still planning and trying to figure things out, but anticipate that, you know, with that many people, it's going to be a little bit more congested. And then also just make sure you bring in that weather gear because Debbie may say something on the day. We don't know. If you can't make the game, you can watch it on ESPN Plus and Nessun Plus as well. And then to get you ready for that game, we'll be doing a recap on Thursday at our regular scheduled time. We'll be bringing back in Nathan Robillard from the Blazing Musket, who covers Hartford Athletic exclusive. He may be the single expert that is available, and we'll have him on Thursday's show to get you ready for that derby. Jason, this was a fun one. Between my dog freaking out behind me and wanting to go play because I didn't walk her before the recording, and the fact that this show we're doing 2 in 1 week, like this is hard to sustain. So I'm really glad that we got this across the finish line. It's always a blast doing recording with you. Before you roll this out, I do want to just make sure for all of our listeners, if you're not already liking us on all of our social content, if you're not already following us, sharing it with friends, subscribing, all the yada yadas, we are on every single platform, even things like Threads and TikTok. Like we say that for a reason. So feel free if you're into those things. We do different content for each of those platforms too. Like we do different videos, different things. So it's not just all like in one spot. Like if you're only on Facebook, for example, you're missing out on some of our content. And then we will be doing that goals.tv content a little later down the road. So we love you all. We appreciate everything that you guys do to support us, and looking forward to seeing a bunch of people at the Guild tomorrow.
Yeah, looking forward to it. Ready to get out of here?
I am beyond ready.
Let's do it. So make sure to check out our friends over at the Blazing Musket for all your New England soccer coverage, including RIFC at theblazingmusket.com. You can follow us on Twitter, Threads, and TikTok at RIFC Podcast. We have an Instagram at Raising Anchor. At Raising anchorpodcast.com.
Sometimes it sneaks up on you, you know?
Yeah, somehow the speed, I messed that up there.
Hey, Anchor's up, buddy.
Anchor's up.
Let's give it to Indy 11 tomorrow.